Only
true.
TV.
Same with live radio.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally.
Live.
Mary Jo at the Met used to tell me that there's no pressure here. It just has to be the best in the world.
Yeah.
When we were doing broadcasts.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the same thing when we were doing lyric opera broadcasts.
Yeah, the pressure's on. I remember when I just started mixing news at PBS, I just was. Hello, everyone. Welcome to DPA's Facebook Live event today. We're very lucky to have three professionals in different genres of sound production, but all sort of after the same thing, great sound capture. Today, we have a varied panel discussion comprised of three professionals working in broadcasting, theater, doing classical, live, studio. We're going to discuss multiple issues and the daily on-the-fly solutions that they all need to come up with. So please send your questions via Facebook. John Root is standing by. Jared's in the background. We'll stop down a few times to take your questions. And our main focus in this panel is to discuss the daily workflow and the current state of affairs on where production is headed. We also will discuss the need for consistency, clarity, and durability that the DPA microphones provide on a daily basis. So we're taking questions, so don't be shy. I'm going to tell you a little bit about our guests real quick, and then we'll just jump right into it. So Katie is one of our guests, Katie Foretek, and she's an audio engineer and assistant design working on and off Broadway and in corporate audio around New York City. Currently, she is furloughed as a radio broadcast engineer for the Metropolitan Opera. She knows my buddy Ed Hartley over there. And as a front of house engineer and backstage audio engineer in Chicago. Angie Dickinson Mikkel is another guest. She started her recording career in 1983 as an assistant engineer at Pierce Arrow Recorders in Evanston, Illinois, after studying sound engineering at Columbia College under the legendary engineer Malcolm Chisholm. Angie worked as an announcer at several radio stations before starting Avocado Productions. It's a cool name. In 1986, the company was moved to a new studio in Colorado in 2002, where it continues today. And last but not least is my good friend Mary Mazurek, who is a Grammy-nominated recording engineer. Her nomination was awarded by the Recording Academy in 2018 in the category of Best Engineered Album in the classical category. She's also a broadcaster and radio producer. Her work is regularly featured on WFMT Radio and WFMT.com. She's also a sought-after educator and speaker who enjoys contributing in the classroom and on panels. and committees within her industry and beyond. So without further ado, let's bring everyone on and start chatting. Cool. I did that all in one breath. Great. Well, welcome everyone. How's it going today?
Great.
Good. How are you?
I'm doing real well today. It's the sun shining in Pennsylvania, and the cat's in the attic, so she won't be bothering us today. So everything's good.
Nice.
Right. So I wanted to start quickly by going around robin here and just, touching a little bit on what you do, let everybody know what it is that you do, and a little bit of your challenges briefly. I know that I'd like to start with Katie because she sent me a list of things that include cotton balls, nail polish remover, adhesive remover, microphone tape, melatonin spray, Krylon, craft wire, toupee clips, pop clips, bobby pins, orchid support clips, shoestring elastic, shoe bag organizer, and rat tail combs. Like,
Yeah.
no one would guess you're in the audio industry.
No, not at all.
Explain yourself.
So these are all things that we use on Broadway and when we're doing the broadcast at the Metropolitan Opera to rig microphones to each individual performer. And it allows us to place the microphones, like I have one here, rigged for picking up each individual. So all of those things are things that we'll use to adhere them to the human body.
That's killer. That's killer. We're going to get back into that a little bit because that list is it just blows my mind. Because I know that, a real quick side story, I did a theater presentation once, and it's not my main genre of perfection. There's things that I do really well and other things I do kind of good. And theater was like, oh my God, I'm a little nervous. I'm going to get in there. And I brought in all of these like accessories that you can buy online. And I went in and the person just went, I don't use that, or that. I get this, and I get this, and I get this, and I do this, and I stick it here. And I'm like, oh my God, you're like wizards.
Yeah, we do a lot of craft.
It's incredible, and the time constraints. So we're going to get back to some of that. I want to go next to Angie, and talk about what it is, what people should know that you do.
I do a wide variety of stuff, which has kept me employed during this shutdown.
Nice.
I work for a private university in Boulder. I do live stage work for several venues, but I also have my own recording studio. So I do and in the studio, there's a wide variety of stuff I do. I'm getting ready to possibly do a voiceover coming up this afternoon. So I do a wide variety of stuff.
So you're getting the voiceover. It's going to be in your premises or remote?
It'll be here.
Cool.
Yeah.
How's he going to do that with the mask on?
Well, I won't be in the room and the mask will be off, and yeah.
That's great. I'm all for it. For it. It's about time we get back to work. That's super cool. And Mary, you balance a tightrope of sort of live and pre-recorded projects. What's a typical day look like for Mary?
Well, before lockdown, I'm assuming.
Yeah,
well, the great thing about it is there's no typical day. It's not boring at all. I specialize in recording and broadcasting classical and acoustic music. The station I work for, WFMT, produces approximately 225 live broadcasts a year, for which I'm responsible for most of them. So sometimes it's live broadcast from the studio, sometimes it's live broadcast from remote, sometimes it will be recorded for delayed broadcast. I also freelance, which is how I got the Grammy nomination. I was contracted to record an orchestra and soloist, and lo and behold, I got a Grammy nomination. With my colleague Bill Malone on the Sadie label.
That's fantastic. What was the name of that piece that you got nominated for? Wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it's an album on the Sadie label called Liquid Melancholy, clarinet music by James Stevenson.
That's cool. I love the clarinet. It's a very, very beautiful instrument and difficult to capture, It's very cool.
The 4011 did a really great job of it.
And we're going to have a round robin with the 4011. I don't think Angie's used one yet, but she might have, but she can throw in her DPA story with her handheld mics. Mary, are you getting to do a lot of like sort of archive editing these days? I mean, are they sort of regurgitating some older programs and getting them out there?
Yeah, so I'm not any less busy. It's just different now. So we're re-airing past live broadcasts. So basically, I'm going back in and post-producing them and taking out any dated references and formatting them
Wow.
for our automation system. So it's not been unbusy at all. Plus, I have a couple of freelance clients that I'm in the editing stages with. So I'm working on that right now. But I did have a remote last week. That was fun.
Nice. What'd you do?
I got called by St. James Cathedral. They're doing some kind of project with cathedral music. So it was a solo cellist, and I was providing an audio feed for video.
Very cool. Very cool. Nice. Probably love to get back to work, right?
Yeah, it was great.
Katie, what is the Met doing these days? Are they sort of doing the same thing?
Yeah, they're rebroadcasting some previous productions.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Let's have a 4011 chat then, because I know that two of you have some great stories, and then we'll go to Angie with her handheld story. So Mary, you start. I'm gonna start. So that's what I'm using today. The 4011 is a first order cardioid by DPA, very high dynamic range, very beautiful, accurate, natural little beauty. And I'm using it for my voice today on this. Probably hearing me going in and out, right? On this little compact shock mount. I also use this for kick drums. I will actually place this, sort of like about a foot away from the kick drum, angle over to one side, and go on the floor and point up to capture that low resonance that we lose when we mic a kick drum. And it's amazing. Your turn, Mare.
Oh, where should I start? I have my very own pair of 4011s. Thank you, DPA, for that. I love them. I use them all the time. I use them with this remote cello recording. I have another remote Friday for solo pianist, and I am gonna give this apparatus a try.
All right, one just put it closer.
Okay.
Closer to
Can
you.
See it? Closer to me?
Yeah, perfect. Stay there.
There you go.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So
Yeah.
Explain what you have in your hand there.
Okay, so these are the capsules off my 4011s with, you'll have to help me with the name, a different preamp that goes to microdot.
Yeah, so it's the active MMPG.
Mm-hmm. And I'm going to use the MMA as the interface, and I'm going to go into Pro Tools with this because it's a pretty simple setup. There's no audience. It'll be in a concert hall, but no audience. So I think this is like the great opportunity to take this on a test run.
And for those that don't know what the MMA is out there in Facebook land, I can't pick mine up because there you go. Perfect. Look at that.
Nice.
So that's an MMA. That's a DPA 2-channel A to D, 24-bit, 96 kilohertz or higher. Core device, mounts on your computer, records into your iPhone. Just a super, like walking around with 2 recording studio preamps in your pockets. And that's how we're all doing these meetings. So we're plugging in the 4011 through an active cable that terminates a microdot, or we're plugging in all of our miniature microphones into there. And that's another use of the 4011. And Mary was holding the ORTF/XY holder, which is the CXO 4000. And that can enable you to do, that's so funny. That can enable you to do 4 microphones, because you see those 2 slots in the middle?
Right. So I could do XY and ORTF. That's so cool too.
And it's super light, right? So you can actually put that up. Now I'm really going crazy. You can get 2 MMAs with a powered USB bar and stick them both in there and put 4 cables on there and do ORTF and XY at the same time on one mic stand.
Nice.
Right? It's crazy. Yeah. That's cool. 4011 story. Katie, go.
4011s, we use them a lot on Broadway as boundary mics, spaced 5 to 8 feet apart on the front of the stage. And they just kind of help fill in the sibilance into the back of the hall, where the back of the audience can't really hear it so much. And for straight plays, it works like a charm. And
your biggest probable challenge is to make sure that if someone's walking across the stage and you hear footsteps, that they never drop out, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
But they also don't cross too much, so that gets a little bit, that could get phasey with other mics. But yeah, that's the challenge, right?
Yeah. Sometimes we'll have an engineer actually following where the actor is going and live mixing boundary mics.
Yeah.
So different feel than a musical, for sure.
Totally. And you're probably using the cardioid rather than the supercardioid, which a lot of other users use because you don't have that rear lobe, right?
Right. Yeah.
So you're not picking up the person in the front row going, "Get me mustard on my hot dog," right? So
Yeah.
it's great.
When we start selling hot dogs on Broadway.
Hey, we'll do anything to get back, right?
You never know.
Yeah, sell a lot of things, right? I'll make a homemade lasagna dinner and bring them down the aisle to everybody if they just
That
get
sounds great.
Angie, I want to hear your DPA story.
Yeah, so I did a live performance recently where we had, I believe it was 7 or 8 vocalists. I'm known for my disdain for a certain microphone that's used a lot for vocals in the live world, and so I was very happy to try these out. We also had a very unique situation where the monitors had to be in some very strange positions. So we did a test of this before the band actually got there, just to make sure that I wasn't going to have any feedback problems. And honestly, bringing those mics up flat, I had no problem at all. Didn't have to fix them ahead of time. And when the vocalists got there, I was able to EQ to make them sound good rather than trying to fix the mic.
And probably was there a live band at the same time?
Oh yeah, yes.
So the off axis, you probably had a little bit of bleed because there's probably reflective surfaces everywhere. But explain how that, because typically that's the game changer because a lot of mics on axis, there's a lot of great mics out there. DPA is one of them. It's when we go off axis that the men are separated from the boys or the girls from the women, right?
Absolutely.
So that's where. Can you talk a little bit about that, where the band was in position to the microphones?
Yeah, so like I said, it was kind of a different setup. So about half of the vocalists were actually facing the band. So that wasn't as big a problem, but they were actually behind or in front of the speaker, the mains.
Oh.
Yeah. Again, it was kind of a challenge, but I honestly didn't have any problems at all. And normally, I like the band to bleed a little bit into the microphones. I like that sound. So if I can control that with these microphones, and not have feedback problems, yeah, I was extremely happy.
Yeah, I agree with you too.
And so were all the vocalists. I mean, they couldn't wait to find out what they were singing into. So,
and that's sort of where it starts, right? I mean, if the performer's confident, you get a better source.
Yeah.
If the performer's going, "Oh, I wish I heard Steve better, and I wish this wasn't like this," and all of a sudden they go inward, and even the best of them can really put out a bad performance, and that microphone is going to capture that. So you're right. If they're listening to their in-ears and they're feeling really good about it, they're going to go for it, and that's when you get it. And I totally 199% agree with you that a little bit of bleed gives you that studio quality live. We're always afraid of that because we're worried about feedback. We want to get another job, right?
Right.
When you have that cohesiveness going down in the off axis, it just gives this, you know what? That sounded better when these vocal mics were on, even though they weren't singing. Everything sounded better. And that's very well said. Very well said.
Yep.
Cool. And my boss just texted me and told me to put the mic closer. So Chris, hopefully that's better for you, buddy. We're gonna go to a question soon, but I want to throw out one word, and I want you all to briefly sort of respond to the importance of it for live shows and studio, whatever. And the word is sort of durability, and we'll throw another one in there: consistency and durability. Katie, I know that for you, that's a game changer.
Yeah, we run into a lot of sweat problems and just the daily use. I mean, doing 8 shows a week on these little tiny microphones takes a toll on them. So we do a lot to brace the connections. We've also, I know a couple of my colleagues have spoken with DPA and reinforced the LEMO connections that we use to go to the transmitters. So those have become more robust in the past couple of years, I found, which is great. So yeah, I mean, it's tricky. Anytime you're going to do 8 shows a week on a microphone is going to be hard on it.
How much time do you typically get when you're miking up with like wardrobe? I mean, I know you're doing it probably before everyone comes out, but what's the most like challenging, nervous type anxiety-filled moment that you have when you're miking things up?
The hardest time actually for me is when we're in the rehearsal studio before we even get to the theater. When you're doing those first fits for all of the performers and people generally know what their hair might be doing or where the microphone needs to go. You're just getting actor after actor after actor, and you have 15 minutes to figure out what the rigging solution is going to be for each person for then however long the show is going to run. So that's the most anxiety inducing is trying to find that. And then, when you get into tech, when you're pulling those super long days, it's going to be a matter of how can we fix whatever went wrong? So it becomes a triage situation.
And I hope all the producers out there and all the directors who really, really appreciate that, because you really do have an influence on how the show goes. If you're constantly like putting a mic on, taking it off, and then they want to reposition it, and then you get a disgruntled diva of some sort. And it really is an amazing people skill, to be able to do that and remain calm and take care of all that and make sure the mic's in the right position, because then the front of house guy is going to flip out. So it's crazy. Yeah. If you want to say anything else about that, please do.
Working backstage in front of house has been an eye-opener. I mean, I'm one of those people that would never ask somebody to do something that I wasn't willing to do. So when I shifted out to doing more front of house mixing, it really gave me the vocabulary to talk to my A2s and say, this is how I need you to go and approach this actor. Nice. So you start to get to know just the flow of what everyone's doing a little bit better, I think.
And I'm gonna hang with you for a second. I'm gonna ask you one more question. Opera is something I love dearly. And I know that you're area miking opera, but are you close miking as well? What are you doing?
Yeah. So I'm not. I know that they've been experimenting with that a little bit more in the last couple of years. And when the Met does their HD broadcasts, the principals will all have some kind of microphone on them. Yeah. So we do use a combination of area miking and close miking to when you're drawing focus, when you're doing a super tight shot on an aria or something like that. You don't want to.
Yeah, you want to bring intimacy in a little closer to the viewer.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's totally cool. Yeah. Well, tell Ed Hartley to give me a call, right?
Absolutely.
Cool. Mary, let's go to you for consistency and durability. How's that important to your trade?
It's very important. So you see my background shot. So I have to.
That's my kick drum, by the way, in that shot. I have the same picture. Go ahead.
So for this particular recording, I went on site. I had to basically take an entire studio with me, and on this particular project, I worked with Sadie Records engineer Bill Malone. So it's a combination of his equipment and my equipment. Between us, we had 8 4011s on this particular session, which was 32 channels. So just the fact that I have to take equipment on the road, the durability is very important, because I don't always know if I can get a replacement for something. So I just have to know it works. And the microphones are beautifully clear, very consistent, just a beautiful sound for especially classical music.
Yeah,
very transparent, very musical.
That's so great. And when you have your own mics and you're going to a gig, it's sort of like puts a swagger in your step. You sort of have an extra level of confidence knowing that, you know what, no matter what happens tonight, I know I can get from here to there because I've got my mics with me, or like a drummer takes his cymbals, it's sort of the same thing. Angie, tell us a story about how you approach consistency and durability. And it could be about any instrument in your studio or just your whole approach.
Yeah, well, I actually what I thought about was recently I've been taking very inexpensive microphones, pulling them apart and modding them. And one of the things that I'm discovering is that even though this is the same model, same brand name, they are extremely different and sound extremely different based on when you purchase them. And it doesn't seem to matter whether it's a trusted brand or not. I don't find that. And of course, I haven't used DPA microphones all that much, although I have heard them used in live situations, and I haven't run into that with DPA. But it was eye-opening. It was originally an experiment just to see, just for something to do, really.
Sure. I'm super impressed that you're modding your own mics. That's awesome.
Yeah. But when I pulled them apart and actually saw the circuit boards, I was just and out of the box, put them both up side by side, listened to them, and one had no gain at all, and the other one sounded okay, and then pulling them apart and looking to see that, oh, they're entirely different on the inside. Yeah, the label sounds is right, but they're not.
It's another fantastic point, man. You're like 2 for 2 today. It's something that we do that costs us a lot of investment in sort of research, is that we always try to take the microphones into a real world situation before we put the specs out, because anybody can go into an anechoic chamber and they could do the specs and they could sort of do the one frequency rather than all the frequencies and all the angles. But even more importantly is the fact that we try to use certain acoustic modifiers. Like in our 4006, we use a thing called the APE, which is an acoustic pressure equalizer ball. And they're 30, 40, and 50 millimeter balls. And I won't harp on this too long, but what that does is sort of does this to the microphone in 3 different sizes, and attenuating an omni microphone on the diffuse field. So we're doing that acoustically around the capsule in midair. We're not doing it electronically. And that's a really important clutch thing to know. You've got a solution. You got a sharp knife in your toolkit that you can always count on.
Yeah.
Can I mention something about the apes?
Yeah, sure.
That was like the last studio session I did for WFMT. Paul was so kind to send me his pair of 4006s for me to try out with some apes, and I used that on very talented Chicago cellist Anita Graff. So I used the 4006 with the ape on cello, and her brother was playing violin, and I used one on that. It was gorgeous.
Yeah. The 50 millimeter you said, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Recently we did an Abbey Road session, and the Decca was 3 4006 with 50 millimeter balls. And actually, I'll give you one of my secrets. I'm giving all my secrets away. So that is a cute little 4006 on an F preamp with a 50 millimeter ball. And that is a killer lead vocal for a studio record.
Nice.
It is just absolutely phenomenal because we're attenuating a little bit on the sides and we're really focusing certain frequencies, really warm sounding without touching the EQ knob. With that said, I'm going to go to Johnny Root. Go, Johnny, go. We got a question?
Hey there. Good morning. How are you, Angie, Kate,
Hi.
and Mary? Good to see you all, as well as you, Jared, and also you, Gabriel. So we have a question coming in from Valerie. She asked, how do you recommend to Mike open opera singer with accompanied piano in a theater, both for recording and live sound? She also asked, headset plus room mic question or distance stereo miking?
I think it depends on what you're looking for.
Yeah.
I think so too.
Oh.
Yeah, the sound reinforcement makes it a little more complicated because normally I would do some, and it would depend if it's like a live concert situation or you're in a concert hall recording for album or broadcast and there's no audience, because sometimes microphones everywhere in the way cause sightline problems for the audience, and sometimes you get complaints about that. In that sort of case, I might do just a stereo pair, but if there's no audience or the recording is the priority and there is audience, I'll spot mic. So I have a lot of options.
Yeah.
I'll say that at the Metropolitan Opera, we never use the microphones to reinforce the actors. We only use the microphones for the broadcasts. I personally like to leave opera as untouched as possible.
I agree. They don't really need reinforcement anyway.
No, they've
The
trained.
good ones, no.
Yeah, exactly.
My feeling on it is that, hello, Valerie, how are you? My feeling is that if your opera can broadcast in a multicast, so you've got the live thing happening, you've got the broadcast happening, and you're seeing visuals. And if you're seeing visuals in a broadcast, sort of the side of me that wants to get a little closer, if the camera goes closer, and I know that may not be like traditional, but I know that the LA Opera has been doing. And John, who's the great guy that we had on the show that did the LA Opera?
Pardon me?
Fred. What's the guy that did the LA Opera? Fred?
Oh, Fred Aldis. Oh no, it's Fred.
Oh.
No, not Fred Aldis is who we had last week. I'm sorry. I'm drawing a blank for a moment.
I'll remember. But Fred, real cool guy. Who?
Vogler.
Jared speaks.
Thank you,
right.
Jared. Yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah.
That's going to cost me a bottle of wine for Fred Vogler. I can tell you right now.
No, that's 1, 2, 3, 5 bottles of wine because you made the show stop. Right.
Fantastic.
We'll get it from Matt Frazier. That's okay. So what I was going to say is they were starting to use the miniature microphones on the body and the area miking. So and just ever slightly bring a little bit of intimacy into a high SPL mic. In a 3mm microphone, we can get 144 dB, or in the 4062, we can get 154, which is enough, to capture that intimacy. But that's just for me. That's my taste. And but I agree with Katie in one respect that if you're at the opera, you sort of are there to hear the hall. You hear the room, and if you're listening to the broadcast, you want to be pure about it. Did we answer your question, Valerie? Hopefully, and do we have another one, John?
Yeah, we do, actually. This question comes in from Lord Spar, and he would like to ask Kate what she recommends to paint lavs and cables. An additional question on that for you, Kate, is what's the average life for a lav on Broadway?
It depends on how hard your show is on the lavs. So I would say that the lifespan fluctuates depending on sweat of your actors, the amount of movement that they're doing. I did a production of Kiss Me Kate that was very acrobatic, and I think we lost. The production ran for 3 months, and I think we only lost 2 microphones during that, and actors were, being flipped over each other. So that was pretty good.
That's really good, yeah.
And in the course of painting mics and cables, I'll use a combination of effects. Anything that is not going to move, I'll try and use nail polish. Flesh tones are very in this season, which is very convenient. And anything that's on a cable, I'll use like a shoe leather spray. That's the melatonin stuff. And then fix that down with a little bit of the artist fixative to take some of the sheen down. And you can really get them to camouflage nicely.
That's so amazing. Have you ever used the TSG paint? Did you mention that?
No, what's that?
It's like a fabric paint. I think it's TSG.
Oh, I have deco markers, which are sort of the same thing.
Probably something like that. Yeah, I was pretty impressed that you can actually. I sprayed them on a like a piece of leather once, and it was just moving the leather around, and it wasn't breaking. It was like totally stretching and staying with the material, which is awesome.
Yeah, totally. That's cool.
And in Broadway, we know that the biggest thing is the consistency of the capsule placement.
Absolutely.
And also the specs. So if a microphone, if you break a mic or you change a mic out, when you grab another box and put it on, it needs to be identical, or the front of house person is going to lose it.
Yeah, yeah. You want to be able to, I mean, running backstage, you want to make your front of house guy or woman's life as easy as possible, right? So if you need to make a switch in the middle of the production, you want to be able to make it so that they can throw the fader at the same exact spot where they were on the previous scene without even thinking about it. That's the goal.
And that's sort of what we really take advantage of at DPA. We make sure they go through, like, I don't even know the right number, but it's like, I've heard like 140 steps of testing.
Sure.
So for that consistency and for that sort of durability, and with the Kevlar cabling and all of that, that helps a lot. I'm probably going to go to questions soon. I wanted to ask Angie, when you're in the studio and you're doing a band, like, this has nothing to do with DPA or any microphones, but what's your first like move? You know, what's your strategy at making a record for, like, let's say a traditional rock band or something?
Well, I mean, the first thing I do is meet with the band and find out, you know, what their expectations are.
Find out who the jokester is, right? No.
That's part of it, yes. And then, you know, it can vary depending on what the instrumentation is for the band. I've done many different genres, so I'm not always getting a bass and a drummer sometimes. It's a lot of acoustic and singer-songwriter things too. So it varies.
Do you tend to use room mics a lot?
I love room. And in my opinion, the room is everything in a recording, no matter if you're recording live or in the studio. I also love to record live in the studio and have done many of those. I love bleed, and I love to hear the room. So with the common process of musicians recording themselves, that's one thing that I wish they would pay more attention to, is where in the room they are especially when they do vocals. Hearing phasing in a vocal is just crazy with me, and so yeah, I wish they would pay more attention to their room and not so much with how their software is working. And I say this all the time: recording has very little to do with software.
Yeah.
So.
No, I totally agree with everything you're saying. Have you ever mic'd down low in a room, like on the floor as well as above, or any sort of immersive projects?
I haven't, no. Yeah, most of my budgets don't call for any immersive sound or even surround. But I do love to use a lot of MS miking. And I particularly like to do that as instead of miking drums overhead. A lot of times I'll use an MS technique right at the eye level of the drummer, right in front.
Yeah, that's super smart. I mean, you're getting a benefit of. It's another. I used to mix a lot of live music and for TV, and that where you just stated is a great place. I use an analogy of skipping stones across the water. When that drummer hits the stick on that tom-tom, yeah, you're getting sound going up. But to my ears, the most pleasing place is a little bit of that, but that frontal projection that comes off the set.
Well, we're not above the drummer. We're not listening above the drummer. We're listening at their eye level also. So.
Oh, I like that. You're 3 for 3, Angie. In my book, anyhow, right? That's fantastic. John, do we have any questions?
We have one more that's come in. This is for all three of our guests today. What is your favorite music genre that you like to either record or to mix live?
And who asked that question?
Bob.
Okay. Well, it's classical for me. Though I've done like traditional folk music, I've done Indian folk music. Basically, if it's an acoustic instrument, I'm all about miking it and mixing it. I've done a lot of different things for radio. I did actually mix a jam band for another radio station. I got kind of called into it. Oh, well, of course you do live radio. You can do the jam band, can't you? I'm like, yeah, I actually
Sure,
can.
never say no. Yeah.
It's been, I started out doing assisting rock sessions and dance music sessions, and it's been a long time, but it was kind of fun. It was pretty fun.
Yeah, that's awesome. Who's next? Anybody else with that question? Are we good?
Pretty equal opportunity, I think. I like
Yeah.
them all.
Yeah. I'm
Yeah,
partial
same
to
here.
a lot of it. I absolutely love playing one kind of music. Like, there's nothing like a great rock record to me. I mean, that's just done right. But I appreciate classical and jazz as a listener and as a recordist. And I got a lot of experience doing that. And it really is nice to be well-rounded when you're an engineer. But I think it's better to be sort of known for a specialty. Even we're going into a world where, they're telling the kids coming up, you got to be fast at your shortcuts. You got to know how to turn the video camera on, turn the lights on, make the coffee, record. And I don't like that world so much. I mean, I'll admit it, but it's sort of reality these days. But I think holding on to, especially in today's, which I think we should turn the conversation to things that you want to talk about in today's, in the workplace and anything at all, like in audio or whatever. I think we should talk about where you think it's going, how this whole episode has just affected the industry, and also being, to me, being a specialist rather than being a jack of all trades is sort of going to become more important, I think, as everyone else thinks it's not. But please, any comments at all, open it up to whatever you want to talk about.
I think you have to be open to changes, and one of the things about my career is that I did kind of follow the revenue path, and so that's how I got experience in so many different areas. And I think, especially if you're starting out, you don't necessarily know one side of the business versus another. You might only know how. You might only know that you like rap music, for instance, but you had no idea, oh, I love jazz too, and the two can be combined. So I think that having experience in different areas can really help you financially.
You said something else that was really interesting in combining different genres. I don't know if you meant to say that, but yeah, you're going 4 for 4. But I think that's great. Even as a creator, as a composer, you hear more and more elements being combined from different genres, and I think that's super cool.
It
So
makes
too,
it so much more interesting
It's
than
badass. Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
The Beatles already happened. Nobody's going to do that again. Or it's Isaac Perlman. It's like that could happen. But I mean, yeah, the tools have changed, and the tools have made us start to think differently about it. And everybody who's like, oh, I don't want to even look at technology. I just want to play my guitar. I just want to mic this up. Where it's so prevalent in our society that we just can't get around it. It's just, and so using it tastefully as another entity rather than doing everything there, it's just so exciting in a way. I think it's exciting in the world today, even for what's going on, that when stuff like this goes down, I think art steps up. I think better songs are written, or more songs that have more relevance. And better restaurants open up, hopefully, but I think we're witnessing a wave. We are living during a time when things are changing, and our industry's been shut the hell down.
Yeah.
So
I often wonder how we're going to, when we return to the live world, what we're going to want to listen to. If you look at the transition of Broadway sound from the last 50 years even, we've started to move into the world where, when I worked on Waitress, they wanted it to sound like a Sarah Bareilles concert. They wanted that pop live sound. Whereas if you go to see Come From Away, it's very folk driven. And so it's more natural. I don't want to say more natural, more distance, if you will. So I kind of wonder if, when we return to the live world where we're all getting to hang out again and connect with the strangers next to us, if we're going to want to hear Zoom calls, if all of our ears are going to be transitioned into this headphone-driven acoustic environment. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I mean, it's your perspective, and it does make sense. I think what I perceive that you're saying is that we are getting muscle memory. We went from one muscle to another muscle, and now we're sort of getting used to doing this. Thank God we're using DPA mics on our web calls, or we'd get really, as my coworker in England said, half of these conferences sound like a bag of cats in a hedge.
Yep.
I thought that was great. That's to Matt. Shout out to Matt. But no, I hear you, man. It's like every time I wake up every day, I'm like, okay, who's doing a theater show or who's doing a concert? Like, who's going to call me today? Because I absolutely love helping design microphones and like being that guy in the pocket of people like you. And you're like, hey, I got a challenge coming up. How can you help me? I mean, that floats my boat, and that's not happening right now. I mean, this is happening in sort of, I think the tolerance level is starting to, we're all getting even keeled. Everybody, I'm amazed at everyone's even keeledness in all of this going on. But I do think that we're getting to a point where somebody got to open something up, or we're going to go crazy,
Yeah.
And I'm hearing it's months away. And if are you guys hearing anything in the industry?
Yeah, there are rumors here in Chicago that one of my live broadcast series is going to start again in July, but they're taking it day by day, but they're not really sure if it's going to be a scenario where the musicians are performing live and there's no audience, or they're going to be performing live and there'll be minimal audience, socially distanced audience. We're not really sure yet. Yeah, so we're just kind of taking it day by day and looking at what the COVID numbers are.
Well, I just heard the New Jersey governor just said that he's going to open up swimming pools for kids, but they have to be 6 feet from each other and no toys. I'm like, that's going to go real well. But
it's going to be interesting.
It was nice. Yeah. Somebody said something.
At the Metropolitan Opera, they're trying to open with their New Year's Eve gala. So that is their new season opener is December 31st.
Beautiful. That's perfect. That's really exciting. That's fantastic. John, did you have another question? You look like you have that look on your face.
Yeah, I do actually. Interesting. This question's coming from Rob from the UK. So greetings from the UK, he states to all of us. How do you treat the audience as part of the audio experience, especially when it comes to audience reaction recording in live events?
That kind of depends. If it's a radio broadcast, we want some of that audience response mixed in as well, because it makes it more exciting and it makes the at-home listener feel like they're more part of the liveness. So that would stay in. If it's an album, like the 2 recordings I've done for Sadie Records, we did orchestra and we recorded in performance. So we recorded, a rehearsal, we recorded the 2 performances, and that was the material for the record. But at the end of the last performance, after the entire audience cleared out, we re-recorded the ending so there was no applause, and then we did some fixing.
That answer your question, Rob? Hopefully, that's good. That's good. How do you guys approach EQ and processing in your daily workflows?
I'm pretty minimal. I pride myself on microphone placement. My teacher from DePaul, his name's Tom Miller, always used to tell us EQ is not a substitute for proper mic choice and placement. So generally, if I'm doing anything, maybe I'm high passing. I very minimal stuff. I'm experimenting a little bit more here and there with compression, and I'm not adverse to using artificial reverb when I feel I need it, but generally pretty minimal.
Nice.
Yeah,
Anyone
I'd
else?
have to agree with that. Mic placement is key. So yeah, I try not to grab the EQ too often. Maybe to cut something. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm sorry to cut you off.
No, cut each other off. It's
I'll say that, if you're going to see a performance and you have an actor who maybe doesn't have a ton going on the top of their head, that you will, you don't really want to see a big microphone that's snaking down over someone's forehead. I mean, audiences, I guess, kind of get used to it, but it can be kind of disjarring especially when you're watching some of those broadcasts. Mm-hmm. So we'll put the microphones here, but that's not exactly a great position. I mean, the center forehead position is kind of going to give you it's what you want. So if you have to make a substitution and move a microphone somewhere else for aesthetic reasons, then grab that EQ knob, nobody wants to hear the jaw. So. Or
my philosophy is, if you have to use it or whatever, if you need hot water in your bathtub, turn down the cold.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's my philosophy. Silly analogy for it, but it works. And
no, it's perfect.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
When I used to
I'm gonna use that when I teach. Actually, that's good. I'm writing that down.
I would be honored. When I was teaching, I used it all the time because half the kids didn't want to be there. It's just like, hey, concentrate. What I was going to say is when I was mixing too, I would sort of put the high pass. I built the filter to put high pass filtering on every channel. And then I would just take it off the kick drum, the piano, and the bass guitar. And then I would take some off only if I needed to, but I would do it very subtly so that right away, if I was in a rush, my mix would just be like sitting better right there with no EQ, just a little bit of deductive equalization. And then move the mics around and then go back and sort of change or stay there. But I always used to do that just because I had no help. I was just like, whoop, all across the whole board. That's awesome. That's awesome. So is there anything else we want to talk about as far as like things in our industry when we do get the hell back to work that need to be better, change? Like maybe it's an opportunity to really go back and sort of like do things the way you want to do them. So if you have any comments on any of that.
Well, I mean, we're kind of alluding to the Zoom fatigue and the horrible sounding stuff. Musicians have been contacting me and I've been advising them on like microphones and interfacing and placement and and I'm a big fan of DPA and this MMA combination with very simple, very high quality. So I think it's a great option. Not all of the musicians can afford something like that, so I kind of like to advise based on their budget as well. But I do highly recommend the DPA products.
We're all becoming consultants now. We're not working.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. Yeah.
Katie, have any final words there? No?
I just, I hope that we don't get used to the Zoom quality. I do, hope that we sort of want the warmth that comes with close miking. So.
Yeah. Angie?
Well, I hope in the live world that we engineers start toning it down a little bit and protecting our audience's ears.
Amen.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's crazy. You're always reaching for the volume knob all the time. When you set something in a live scenario, and you could hear it from the back of the theater or the back of the venue, for some reason people want to keep making it louder.
Yeah. And
your ears get a reference for that. Just like I can hear the guy putting the glass down on the Broadway stage. It doesn't have to be louder. I can hear it just fine. I totally agree with everything that you said. It's been a great honor to host you guys today. I wanted to give you a chance to say one more thing if you want to. If not, we're going to sort of start heading home. And I want to also say that it's been an honor to talk to you all, and I want to have you all back. We're going to start doing pre-recorded little ditties here, and maybe we can have you back separately to go a little bit more in depth, and I would love to do that. This may be the last DPA Facebook Live event. Maybe, maybe not. We're not totally sure, but hopefully we'll be getting back to the live scene soon and going that live rather than this live. But it's been an honor to talk with all of you, and I hope you enjoyed it half as much as I did. Really.
Yeah, it's fun.
It's been fun.
Yes, thank
Yeah.
you so much.
Totally. And John, thanks for fielding questions. Do you have any more questions, by the way?
Well, actually, we do have one more kind of a dual question here.
Go ahead, John.
And maybe you mentioned this earlier on the broadcast here, but there's two questions. One is, if you have a mentor, somebody that is at the top of your list, who would that be? Each of one of you to respond to. And for our audience that's listening, what would you recommend to up-and-coming engineers of either finding a mentor, or are there different associations that maybe you're part of that you would recommend to some of the folks that are going to be following in your footsteps and others?
Your question, John.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I think we should mention Sound Girls.
Absolutely.
They just started a mentorship program, and I think the three of us are all signed up as mentors for that program.
Great.
So that's a great place to start. You don't necessarily have to be a girl to be a member of Sound Girls. And for the first part of the question, you don't really know that you have a mentor until later. And you should always be learning from everyone around you. Don't take that attitude that I know better than this person, because you're always going to be able to learn something from that person, even if it's if it's how to coil a cable correctly. You're gonna, something very minute maybe, but you're gonna learn something from that person. And I can name a number of people along the way that I've learned a ton from, not realizing at the time how much I really learned until I had to put it into service later.
Yeah, I've had so many mentors. It's been valuable, both male and female, but it was extremely helpful. My first female mentor, her name's Larita De La Serna. She's actually nominated for an Emmy this year.
Awesome.
Had I not had her as a mentor, I probably would not have continued, because after I worked initially as an assistant for Universal Recording in Chicago in the early 90s before it closed. So that was Bill Putnam's room originally. When it closed, she had to leave for LA. She couldn't get any work. And we don't hire women engineers, but you can answer the phone if you want. And had I not had her as an example of a working female engineer, I might have given up.
Awesome. Oh.
Yeah. But as far as now, I agree with Angie. There are mentors everywhere, and I've had some really great opportunities. Like I got the opportunity a couple years ago, an invitation from John Newton and Blanton Allspaw, which are, multi-Grammy award-winning producer and classical engineer, to come sit in on a recording for the Oregon Symphony. And I was like, yep, I'm there.
Yeah.
For sure. Last week, I was talking with my colleague, Bill Malone, who I got the nomination with for Best Engineered Classical. And we were just talking about stuff. I'm like, hey, do you do this? Or, what is your approach to mixing? And we're just talking back and forth. And, I get a lot out of talking with my peers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I think it's all about the community that you build around yourself and around the area of the industry that you're working in. I mean, I don't think any of us have sort of locked into one thing and then stayed with it through our entire career, aside from audio. You learn something from every different event that you do, from every different situation that you're in. So yeah, anywhere that you work is going to be filled with either mentors or mentees.
It's amazing how something so invisible can be so intimate, sound.
Yeah.
It's true.
When you hear, it touches your brain, it touches your heart through your ears, and through your brain especially. And it's something that I think we all fall in love with. And that's the ultimate mentor for me, is just when I was a kid, I just remember my dad putting on 2 reel-to-reel tapes and hitting play, and music coming out of it, and just being changed forever. It just felt like 2 warm arms, because thank God my dad was always into hi-fi equipment, which is great. And that's fantastic. I also want to give a shout out to Sharon Hagee, who actually worked with you guys, and she's hopefully she's watching. So we'll give her. She did a few events, I think, with the women's panel, and so I wanted to give her a little quick shout out. Hi, Sharon. Hopefully you're doing well.
She's awesome.
Yeah, totally. I want to give I think we should all give everyone a virtual wave out there and say goodbye. I think we're going to end this. Here we go. Nice. Thank you again from the bottom of my heart, and we'll follow up and get something else scheduled. Take care,
Sounds great.
everybody.
Yeah.
All right.
Have a good one.
This was awesome. Thank you.
You're awesome, all of you.
Thank you.